Great. So thank you everyone for joining. So I'm Andrew Luthwaite. I work as a consultant here at Avolution. And today's session really is to go through some of the key topics and trends within areas like the finance industry. And we're actually joined today by a number of people. So I'll let you introduce yourselves in a few minutes. But what I would say is throughout this session, we are covering a range of topics. So what we'll do is we'll be posing some questions to the panelists. They'll be giving some responses. We'll start having some discussions around those, but we'll also encourage audience participation as well. So if anyone does have any questions that come up, feel free to throw those into the chat window. I'll keep keeping an eye on that. And throughout the session, we'll do our best to address each of those questions as they come in as well. But maybe just to kick things off, we'll go through a round of introductions. So Rob, should we start with you?
Yep, that's okay. So Rob Halloran, I'm Enterprise Architecture Practice Lead for Coventry Building Society in the UK. I've been with the Society for 5 years now in an enterprise architecture role, doing a number of different activities. We've been using Abacus now since roughly the beginning of 2020, so a short amount of time, but made some good progress and really useful activities. Personally, for myself, prior to the Coventry, worked in a number of different organisations and sectors. So TNT, logistics and transport, Jaguar Land Rover, automation, vehicle manufacturing, and TUI travel for holidays.
Perfect, that's great. Francois, over to you.
So yes, Francois Bouchard. I've been in IT for more than 30 years now. I'm with the Business Development Bank of Canada. I've been there for almost 18 years. I'm one of the enterprise architects there. BDC is in the middle of its digital transformation, and obviously we've acquired Abacus close to a year ago. Been busy setting up the platform, working on a few key use cases using Abacus. Trying to map the understanding the changes to people, process, and technology that's going to enable our strategy, enabling our solution architecture team with Abacus, and also trying to get a sense of how much technical depth we have and managing that depth through Abacus. That's
perfect. Thank you very much. And Adnan, over to you. We can't quite hear you, unfortunately. We'll give that one more go. We'll come back to you if we don't get any audio in the next few minutes, but Umut, we'll go to you next.
Okay. Hi, everyone. This is Umut from Turkey, Impertech. I'm an engagement manager and enterprise architecture service leader. And we've been in the market almost 12 years now, and we are partners with Avolution since 2015. And we've been working with banks, telco sector, and insurance sector, especially. And we implemented many enterprise architecture governance programs in different banks, different kind of industries, we can say. And I believe that would be enough for now.
Perfect. Adnan, we can try once more with you, hopefully, see if your audio works.
How's it now? Is it audible now?
Much better. Yeah, that's perfect.
Excellent. Perfect. Thank you very much. I'm a senior enterprise architecture specialist in KFH with a total of 23 years experience in different sectors. In Islamic banking, in ISP, I've been working. I started my career in development, and I worked in many positions in software engineer, DBA, system analyst, system support, a manager in budgeting and control, and eventually right now working in EA. I successfully managed to deliver and run the project of implementing Abacus software last year with Impertech. It was really a wonderful journey. We had before Alphabet, we had some difficulties with that software, and now we transferred to Abacus. And really, we are enjoying this experiment, and we are really getting the fruits out of it. Also a key member in Hameda's team who presented today our journey in the webinar today morning. That's it for our digital journey.
Perfect. Thank you very much. So yeah, there's some good experience actually on the call from both, I guess, industry experience, people who've been using Abacus for various degrees of time as well. Sort of throughout the questions, you're probably likely to comment on maybe your use of Abacus, but certainly more on your expertise around the area and maybe things that you've come across over your time within the roles that you've played. So for today, really, we've got a number of questions, as I mentioned, that we'll go through. We can see there's actually some audience participation already, which is good. But what we'll do is we'll kick off with one of the first questions and we'll go around the room and ask everyone, of course, maybe just to drop their opinion on that question. But it's a discussion as well. So more than happy, of course, for you all to just discuss this amongst yourselves as well. And it may end up going down a few other routes potentially. So the first thing we want to kick off with is how we actually define, or how you guys might define technology strategies to enable digital transformation. Rob, we'll start with you on this one. And of course, anyone else feel free to jump in at any point if you've got any other comments as well.
Okay, yeah, that's fine. Thank you. So we've been, as an enterprise architecture team, working on a 3-year strategy for the society, because like other organizations, we want to go through a digital transformation. So understanding what digital actually means is a big part of that. It's as I'm sure we're all aware, it's not just a fancy mobile site or a website. It's about how the whole organization operates. So it's about automation. How do we make best use of automation? It's about how do we introduce APIs to enable that automation and process improvements and such like. So in setting out our strategy, we wanted to make sure we incorporated that, but also built into that the strategy and direction that the society wants to go in. What products it wants to sell as a building society, how it wants to mature and grow in the future. So in order to define that strategy, we broke it down into a number of layers. And initially we started from a bottom-up approach, looking at what our current major technologies were, how they needed to evolve, taking into account, as we said earlier, technical debt and fragility and things that need resolving. Looked at where they are today in terms of their capabilities, what those technologies were, how they needed to move forward, and what that target state needed to be in the future, and how the transition at a high level, enterprise level, could work between those two states. Then we looked at it from a top-down approach, starting with major business use cases. So what key activities, what key deliverables, goals does the society want to achieve? Took those and broke them down into outcomes that would be a consequence of achieving that particular goal, and map them to the business capabilities that we'd actually defined. And the business capabilities we'd also stored in Abacus, as well as all of our technologies, applications, and supporting tech. So by mapping and working both from a bottom up and a top down, we attacked it from both directions. That enabled us to also spot some gaps that we hadn't really initially thought of, because as enterprise architects in an IT function, we very often, as we all do, get very blinkered into what the technology is. But when you look at it from the other direction, you start to identify things that you need to maybe rethink or look at it in a different way. And so by linking all those components together, starting with the capabilities and the outcomes down to supporting technologies, we can show how all of that transformation supports what the business needs to do and how it wants to move forward. And then ultimately what we'll do is put that into Abacus, building out what we've already got in there so that we can maintain that and mature it in the future.
Okay. I mean, imagine for most of those outcomes and goals, if it ends up being a long list, is there a way that you kind of prioritize some of those internally? If you get other members of the business in different departments getting involved with that type of prioritization?
Yes, so obviously, I mean, this kind of transformation has to involve stakeholder engagement. So it's about, so we had a start point for ourselves, because of course, when it's very difficult if you go to someone and say, tell me about something, it's a blank sheet of paper. Yeah. If we put some initial thoughts down on to begin with, went to those various stakeholders and discussed what their thoughts were, what their direction would be. Some depend upon the different stakeholders. Some can give you different views. Some operate at a very high level, some at a lower level. But then again, as an enterprise architect, that's what we're there to try and interpret that and bring it up to a consistent level. But definitely, stakeholder and business engagement is key to making sure that we get those right and those primary outcomes that we want to achieve.
Yeah, I mean, Adnan, you had a session this morning on digital transformation as well, because you've raised your hand there. So I'm guessing you may probably face similar situations.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you for that. Actually, we can say also the technology strategies are driven by business strategies. And those strategies are basically influenced by many factors. For example, the global factors, the pandemic one, this really, boosted the digitalization up to the maximum extent. And also we have the regulatory authorities also that influences the business strategies. Accordingly, we draw our technology strategies. For instance, we started to launch our virtual branch services. At the beginning, it was a little bit slow, but during the pandemic, the regulator also approved a lot of initiatives for digital signature and a lot of digital services, which enabled us to really go far beyond and faster with the digital transformation.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I did. Also, we have the customer onboarding. That one also we really benefited a lot from the pandemic. We made a big progress for digital customer onboarding. We had this also in our online banking, so such that the customers are no more required to appear or to visit the branches physically.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. I think certainly some of those topics around regulations will come on to later on as well when we talk about things like operational excellence. Certainly here in the UK as well. I mean, bodies like the FCA have started, or at least probably past this year now in March this year, released some of the services that banking industries and building societies have to adapt to. But just a very quick one, and Francois, I'll bring you in here as well, but it's just a slight comment from the audience, and you can comment on digital transformation in general. But this was a quick one saying, what are some of the biggest hurdles that limit business value of the transformation? So for example, people, hiring, skills, or is it maybe more tech focus or exec level buy-in? Have you come across any of those internally?
Yeah, of course. Well, we are in the middle of our own digital transformation as well. And obviously there are many roadblocks, I guess. One of them being, the debt we carry, right? So, it's an organization that's been around for many years, more than 70. So we carry the brown stuff from the past. So in order for us to evolve from those legacy systems into the new world, developing the CI/CD capabilities, developing REST APIs, making the customer journey fully digital for a portion of our business, needed a lot of changes to the foundations. Whether it's the identities foundation, all the technology, the cloud and so forth. So obviously technology was one big piece of the puzzle. But I'm guessing that the other big part, at least for us, is the ways of working, the new roles, the new way people need to work, the new technology that they have to learn and get familiar with. So I think the transformation portion also affects a lot of that, and it's definitely a challenge for us as well. Plus, we're still an organization that's very project focused or program oriented. So one of the challenge for us was also to align these programs together, right? And the EA team has been actively involved in trying to align those and understand the dependencies and and so forth. So definitely there as well.
Yeah, there's definitely a mixture of things like internal and external. So you've got your customers being affected. We have obviously digital channels being used a lot more, a lot of contactless payments, and I guess the risks maybe and opportunities that come with that probably balance out to some extent. But Umut, I mean, I can bring you in here as well because you've worked with a number of different customers. What's your experience with this type of area?
Yeah, thank you, Andrew. Actually, I wanted to add something addition to Adnan's, and also to talk about a little bit prioritization, since Rob also mentioned a little bit about it. And what we built actually in many banks, and especially in KFH, for example, we focused on building a more comprehensive EA governance model. So while building this EA governance model, and with the help of our framework and Abacus flexibility, we managed to handle both strategy governance and EA practices, both together on the same platform. So we built some automations calculations to prioritize, visualize these strategic objectives, goals. And meanwhile, we also put some scoring algorithms to value the capabilities, business capabilities of KFH, for example. And so basically in the visuals heat maps, let's say, we will be able to see and manage the maturity value of the capabilities, functionalities bank is providing at this point, so that we also talk about with this Hamida in the morning session in the digital transformation to do the digital maturity assessment, and also to make the to-be capability planning. We use these methodologies together to prioritize which strategies should realize first, fulfilled first, with what kind of projects, and which capabilities, functionalities we should touch at the beginning. And we need to also always monitorize this. So this is, I believe, one of the key subjects that we need to focus on while prior to defining the strategic goals.
Yeah, definitely. I think, especially when we come to these other topics around operational resilience and technical debt, you mentioned things like algorithms there and KPIs that have been captured. I think that becomes quite an important aspect of it. What we'll do, maybe we'll quickly jump to the operational resilience aspect, because certainly from that perspective, and Rob, I'll bring you back in here, with the new kind of regulations that come in, I mean, you have to go through kind of operational resilience maturity assessments. So similar to what Umut mentioned then for maturity assessments for things like services and capabilities internally. With those kind of regulations or policies that come in where you have to kind of identify what's classified as important business services, and I guess COVID to some extent has maybe forced people to realize what is and isn't important. Has that been a big factor for you internally to try and get that information, or is that something that you've managed quite well?
It has been a big piece of work that needs to be done. Our operational risk and resilience team have done a tremendous amount of work in that respect, in terms of identifying those important business services and what they're there to deliver, and also starting to work on with ourselves in terms of what technology is needed in order to deliver those important business service. It's not to be underestimated by any stretch of the imagination. It is a big task, and to your point, exactly what is an important business service. The regulators, and I'll be honest, I don't know, the regulation is very, very thick, all the details, but they do give some guidance. But equally, for every organisation, it's going to be slightly different. And getting to the real crux of what those important ones are for yourself is a big activity. We have done very well. We have got quite a good definition of the important service, but then there is another step after that, which is the purpose of this, as I understand it, is to be able to recover from a situation and be resilient as an organisation. So there's a layering to this, in the sense of you've got the important service that the organisation provides, but that's supported by a process which is supported by technology applications and infrastructure, such like. So the linkage down that chain is very important as well, in order to be able to identify what is needed to support that service and make it resilient, but also to what needs to happen if that service becomes unavailable for whatever reason, and therefore needs to be restored. So again, that's where our team will start to come into play in creating that linkage all the way up and down the chain. And it's important for us as well, because in the work that we've been doing, we see the process and the process definition, even if it is at a high level, as kind of the filling in the sandwich between the business capabilities and services and objectives at the top, and the technology applications and infrastructure underneath. So those processes are key in joining those two things together. So it's a win-win situation for everybody, really, in terms of IT and architecture gain lots of information, and the business and operational risk get a true end-to-end picture. It's not to be underestimated how much work's involved, though.
Yeah, I can imagine. And I mean, you mentioned something there around kind of scenarios, I guess, and modeling those kind of different states. And I guess for things like operational resilience, trying to operate within those kind of max and min boundaries of what's classified as an important service. I remember doing a WebEx last year, I think, at this point. And we were talking about things like the financial crisis of 2008, and how at that time regulations were, can you plan for the worst case scenario where I think it was GDP falling by 5% or something like that. And then the Bank of England came out last year at this time and said GDP was falling for about 14%. So modeling those kind of different scenarios and situations is probably really important. And I guess it helps you kind of shape the kind of strategies that you're working on as well. Adnan, I can see you've got your hand raised there as well. Do you want to add on to that?
Yes, thank you, Andrew. Again, the points were mentioned really and really highlighted very well by my colleagues here, Umut and Rob. I just wanted to add a few points here, that the challenge is not only about the tool or the software. The challenge is very, very big, as it's a cultural challenge. It's a teamwork challenge. It's a processes, practice, all together in the organization. And really, what really helped us in this challenge is having a ready, and very solid framework from Impretech that really helped us, to facilitate this exercise of drawing the most important capabilities and linking them with the processes and services. And after that, coming down to the supporting applications and technologies. This was really wonderful, challenge, and it's really interesting.
Yeah, definitely. I was just going to say, I can see Francois nodding along there as well.
Yes, I would like also to share our challenge, another challenge we had recently, that is merging with one of the big Islamic banks, another financial institution. Actually, we are acquiring them. KFH, Kuwait Finance House, is acquiring another bank, which added another layer of challenge here, because you have to oversee the big picture of the business capabilities and try to identify where do you have weakness, where do you need optimization, where do you need to eliminate or merge. This really was a big challenge, and without having the proper tool, the proper framework, it would have been really, a big mess up. So I just wanted to share also this experiment, and it's quite really interesting.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the technology aspect, the cultural aspects, I think are important. There's a key bit there as well for things like mergers, and even without the mergers, of trying to communicate the kind of work that's actually going on. I think that's probably quite difficult at times as well. Francois, do you want to add on to that?
Well, I agree with what Adnan was saying. Getting proper sponsorship and from the organization with regards to the tool, and demonstrating its value. It's definitely a challenge. It needs a lot of dedication and a lot of effort, like Rob was saying, to model everything, connect all the components together, and be able to represent visually where you are, where you're heading, and how you're going to get there. It's definitely a challenge, and I guess we no longer can rely on Visio and Excel and PowerPoint to do this. We need better tools to do so. So I think Abacus is definitely one of those tools.
I mean, that just falls quickly in line with some of the other questions coming in. So one of them here is, how do you actually measure the business value of the digital platforms or services, or the value of the transformation to the business? So I assume you're using things like dashboards or various KPIs or metrics to highlight some of that, are you?
We are, but we're still very early in our own process with regards to that. So we're hoping that we'll be able to produce better KPIs and dashboards from measuring where we are in that transformation, and we're counting on the capabilities within Abacus to do so.
Okay, and Uma, I know you've been using Abacus for a while there. So is that the kind of thing you're finding across the customers that you're working with, that way of communicating?
Yeah, actually, throughout the years, we gained a lot of experience with different customers, and what we learned is business architecture is the most crucial part of this process, and we developed some layers for this business architecture, and capability architecture is the most crucial one. Actually, this is what we build in KFH and in many other industries, institutions, and throughout this, we put maturity assessment and also business value scoring algorithms. And like you said, we define some KPIs to measure this. And at the end, these are financial institutions. So customer aspect, product aspect, these are some of the crucial things that we focused on while valuing the capabilities. So we defined 5 or 6 capabilities actually to measure the business value of the capability, so that you can, while, for example, in KFH situation, while building a consolidated business model, you need to also see the values of the capabilities so that you can see which capabilities needs to be replaced or enhanced, for example, or retired while consolidating. All these are measured with some KPIs, and we call it business value, actually, and product, customer aspect, process, organization, and what was channel. At the end, banks touches the customers through the channels, distribution channels. So the channel value is very important, and especially when it comes to digitalization, and which is trending topic because of a lot of things, as you can imagine. Channel is another KPI that we focus. So we believe and strongly suggest that the capabilities or the functions under those capabilities needs to be defined in more low atomic level, in channel level, what kind of functions we provide in which channels, so that we can manage this program, digital transformation program or operational resilience, all these in more, how can I say this, at a focused way, we can say. This is what we experience especially, and we put it in our model. And with the help of Abacus, of course, we visualize it with heat maps and this interactive dashboards. Actually, it is very helpful for especially higher managers, C levels, to evaluate, visualize what the managers and the seniors, associates are doing, and what is most up-to-date current situation.
Yeah, definitely. I think there was a session just before this on things like high octane dashboard and visualizations. And I think that's always been an issue that we found as well, working with various customers, is there's the analysis side of things where we're capturing those types of metrics, we're getting some good information out, but really it's only useful if you can actually make that available, make it usable to those types of stakeholders, whether it's cost properties that you dictate at a high level or other type of metrics that are captured. So that's probably one of the best ways of maybe measuring something like that. And I guess that comes across all of these aspects that we've touched on here on these types of KPIs that we're capturing as well. We do have another question coming in, actually. This one's, so it's relatively generic, but I can maybe combine this with another one that we've probably got on the list. So it says, how have you overcome the challenges COVID has placed on the industry? I mean, before COVID, to be fair, there were probably other challenges, things like fintech starting up, of course, everyone becoming a bit more cashless. Are you seeing maybe different challenges that COVID has posed, maybe opportunities that it's posed, perhaps?
I'll start. I mean, challenges from ourselves operationally, being an organization that was very sort of office-based, and also prided itself on members first, so very branch orientated, so branch a building society branch on the high street orientated. So when COVID came along, the contact centers saw a big increase. branches had to close, but also in order to be able to support those contact centres, we had to think of ways of how we could move that workload out around the organisation. I appreciate for lots of organisations that might sound fairly standard and maybe even something you do today, but for an organisation that didn't operate in that way pre-COVID, to almost overnight flip to that new situation was a big change and challenge for us. It has then enabled us to do other things. So of course we can now support contact centre information through branches and so on and so forth, and also everybody working from home. Again, pre-COVID, head office-based staff were predominantly office-based with occasional working from home. Almost literally overnight, that flipped on its head. So being able to support that quickly was a big change that we had to go through. But it's also driven lots of other things in the sense of accelerating collaboration within the organisation as well. So tools have come in to support that, which will give longer-term benefits overall.
I mean, does that kind of lead into things like the different processes? Maybe internally, of course, you're always going to have different processes that maybe, if working from home, tend to get broken or skipped just to kind of continuing to deliver those types of services. Has that been an issue as well, trying to keep up with delivering those services? Or have you been keeping kind of, I guess, highly regulated as most financial customers are? That's probably something that you've always had to keep on board.
Yeah, I mean, the workload has obviously carried on, if not increased.
Yeah.
But keeping pace with things, yes, that's carried on. So that's okay. We've been able to do that, and we sort of actually accelerated and achieved more through working from home. The benefits and advantages and efficiencies that you can get from that. It's introduced other things, so working practices, the recognition of time for yourself, mental health issues, all those sorts of things have also come to the fore, and the company's been very, very supportive and in looking into those and providing appropriate mechanisms to support staff and people. And as this continues, which I'm sure it will in terms of working from home, hopefully not COVID, then we can start to work those and make this more of a long-term hybrid working environment and take advantages of those benefits that we've achieved over the past 18 months or so.
Yeah, definitely. That's great to hear. I mean, I think that's probably one of the positives of working from home, and those kind of situations have become much more aware, I think, across organizations, so people are dealing with those a bit more. Francois, do you want to extend on that as well?
Yeah, we are in this similar situation. Obviously, we do commercial lending on or mainly across Canada here, and we've seen a huge increase in the number of loan requests at the beginning of COVID due to the fact that everything was closing down and everybody needed money. So we ended up having like 3 years worth of requests over the period of 2 months and a half. So it was quite demanding. Even some IT folks had to pitch in and go help the business directly and issuing those loans. So COVID definitely took a toll on the staff. We were lucky enough that our unified communication ecosystem and the collaboration ecosystem was almost there. So it only took us a few upgrades, and pretty much everyone had a laptop and was working from home within a few weeks. But it's been difficult, and we're currently looking at we have a project underway called Return to Office, and we're trying to figure out what the new normal is going to be. So
yeah, I think most people are doing that. Certainly, we're trying to do that as well. Yep. Uma, you probably travel a lot as well. So how has that affected you?
Yeah, actually, it was really hard to adapt the situation. As being a consultant and being on the customer side all the time. It was really hard. And when it comes to enterprise architecture, it's very niche topic and conceptual, as you can understand, and it is really hard to explain even when you are face to face doing this job. So we had some difficulties, but luckily, for example, the beginning last year in May, we did start project with KFH, and we never went to Kuwait. For example, we were in Turkey and they were in Kuwait, and we managed to do the project less than 6 months, I believe. and we did it remotely actually, and we thanks KFH adapted also the situation quickly. We managed to do it remotely, and other than this adaptation period, we didn't have much difficulties, to be honest. But of course, the concept itself is hard to explain most of the time, even for the IT guys, and when it comes to business guys, it's more art, I believe. But we adapted, and it's going well actually nowadays, I can say.
Adnan, do you agree with that? I won't let you criticize Uma on the call, but
Yeah, definitely. I agree with my colleague Umut here. Actually, since I run the project last year, I reported actually that the COVID-19 is an opportunity that we can exploit. And this is what happened actually, we were able to execute the project in a very short period. And it was really wonderful, experience to have everything remotely, virtually. So yes, it has both sides. It has the pros and cons, and we focused on the bright side of the pandemic. And if you can see everywhere, what really enabled the digitalization, many people would say COVID-19. You can see a lot of initiatives that were lagging for years and years. In this short period, you can say it was accelerated a lot. One of them is the digital signature, which was authorized and approved by the regulations. This was incorporated in our processes, in our designs, in our solutions, And here I would like to emphasize and focus in one thing. If you don't have the holistic view, if you don't have the visibility to your architecture, to your landscape, which is enabled through this framework and tool, okay, you would never be able to know what you need exactly to change from these building blocks, and what would be the impact of changing or touching any building block, where it's gonna touch, where it's gonna reflect. So having this clear visibility, makes you step forward with confidence, full confidence. This is the beauty and the strength of having such a EA tool, a flexible EA tool, and a very robust framework.
Yeah, it's a very good point. I think obviously being able to adapt to change quickly, and arguably the words agile architecture and financial institutions don't go hand in hand, I guess, but it certainly is what's happening recently. Just based on time, I just want to go back to the audience quickly, because there's a specific question here where you maybe just to be able to provide your advice, what you've done internally. So I'll read it out. So the question is, we've had to reduce our services to only priority services, but our view within EA, which used to be a 3 to 5 year horizon, has now seemingly been more of a 3 to 6 month horizon, really focused on cost cutting. So what other ways have you found to cut costs or reduce costs other than just rationalizing lists of portfolios of applications? Tough question for you all there. Put you all on the spot. I mean, cost cutting is obviously one of the things, but Adnan, I'll let you just jump in on that one first.
Yes, okay. One of the ways of cost cutting is when you identify what services are really, replicated, what capabilities are really, not optimized, or there is a chance really to merge, and use less resources, less technologies, less resources to support it. This is one of the ways, to cut the cost and optimize the total cost of ownership. Also, when you look at the financial aspects, the operating expenditures, okay, when you have a clear bubble charts, when you have clear graphs, and you look at the other dimensions, is this service really worth keeping it or investing more resources or financials, whereas it is used by less let's say staff, or it serves very minor customers slice or segment. So having these viewpoints, perspectives, really makes you really focus where to put your investment, and this wouldn't be possible without having this clear dashboards and graphs, and you can easily, slice and dice and drill down and really explore how other things, where is the money going, where I'm investing, where's my direction. And this is all, helps a lot to optimize and really cut the cost.
Yeah, definitely.
I might want to add the fact that, reducing duplication and simplifying the architecture and reducing the number of environments and automating the back end through infrastructure as code and so forth can all lead to cost reduction, but it takes money to do that. So it's kind of a oxymoron, because you have to invest in order to be able to streamline and get rid of those debts. So it's been a challenging time for sure, because trying to do that and trying to one of the things we did was to get everybody certified on discipline agile from PMI also, and we're trying to change a bit of the way of working throughout IT and some of the line of businesses as well, so that we feel that by adopting discipline agile might help in being more efficient and reducing cost and have a better time to market also for the business.
That invest to save point is a very, very good one as well, because as part of the digital transformation and 3-year strategy that we've been doing is looking at the money that we would need to invest in order to achieve that. What benefits, what returns would we get by doing it, so that it becomes cost beneficial overall. So absolutely, it's not necessarily about cutting money and saving in the short term. It's thinking about how can we invest to save in the long term.
Yeah, definitely agree with that. There's definitely other aspects of this which we found across other customer sites as well. From a cost perspective, of course, always comes up. It's probably the first thing that gets asked. But I think there's always opportunities to look at other types of value or metrics that people should be looking at, whether it is, especially coming out of COVID, things like quicker time to market, personalization of new services, these things which might have kind of indirect cost implications. But I think they should always be kind of kept at the forefront of minds, as much as cost reduction is obviously key right now. There should always be opportunities here as well. It's not just cut things, but potentially to add new value. I'm pretty sure we could keep going for this conversation for another hour or so, but unfortunately, time-wise, does restrict us. What we'll actually do is we'll probably just give you all a chance to finish off with some closing comments, maybe things you've learned, tips, maybe industry trends that you've heard of or working within. Just a quick 30-second, 1-minute closing comment. And we'll start with you, Umut, for that.
Okay, so you catch me on guard, but
I'll put you on the spot.
Yeah, okay. At the end, what everyone is actually stated, the good governance model and with a holistic view and a live digital twin repository, let's say, okay, is always the key idea, I think, point here to go behind the budget cutting, for example, okay, or seeing the duplicate things, or to manage the digital transformation, to manage the application rationalization, your portfolio, or vendor management, or strategies. So everything comes to one point, actually. That is the EA governance model, a perfect EA governance model, but it shouldn't be a traditional. It should be has some additional layers, like strategy or portfolio alignment or risk analysis or security, information security. So the stakeholders should be also there. So EA itself has to be an organizational culture. It shouldn't be a department role or responsibility. Yeah. I think this is the key idea behind of everything.
Perfect, thank you. Francois, over to you.
Well, I'm going to say that, doing a digital transformation, transforming your business is complex. It's definitely a tough job. It takes a lot of effort and dedication and money to do so. and all the EA teams, we've talked about governance. We've also went through a lot of governance change and new deliverables, and we're using Abacus to do all the solution architectures now. You need a lot of data to make informed decisions as well. So it's definitely through that Abacus can help doing all of this, right? It can be overwhelming, I believe, to use at first. It's a complex platform. Needs a lot of training, but based on your dedication and effort you're willing to invest, it's definitely a tool to help an EA team succeed. So, but you have to baby step into it and demonstrate value in small increments. I guess it's something that you have to. You can do a big bang with this, and I wanna finish by saying thanks to you guys at Avolution for inviting us today. It was a pleasure to share a little bit of our experience with you all.
That's great to hear. No, thanks for your time too. And we definitely advocate starting small as well. I think it's always one of the best approaches to these situations. Adnan, do you have any final closing comments?
Yes, thank you, Andrew. Thank you very much. I would really like to emphasize on some of the keywords, the magic words you can say. Yes, the tool implementation, the tool maintenance, the repository maintenance might be overwhelming task, and it could add some overhead on the teams, different teams, involved. But the most important success factor here is having the collaboration, having the information sharing, transparency. That is the real, what makes the difference here, to have this EA practice go smooth in the organization and having this, a holistic view, respond fast to market changes, business changes and demands. Okay, so these are very important. And I think in this world, it's about to be or not to be. And this is a really very, very important, weapon that we in financial industry, we need to use, we need to be equipped with, so that we can really survive, especially talking about the disruptors here, to financial industries. We have a lot of emerging technologies. One of them is the blockchain. Blockchain technology can be one of the most important disruptors for financial industry, where you don't need financial mediators to execute the financial transactions. So what do you do in this case? Do you keep still in this case, or you have to respond? You have to adopt this emerging technology, and this is what we did in KFH. We have implemented Ripple payment that is based on blockchain, and it was an pure IT initiative. And it was very successful with our subsidiaries in Turkey and other places also. So it's very, very important practice, and we have to be really, all together working as a team and collaborate.
Yeah, perfect. And definitely blockchain would take us down a couple more hours, I think, of this call as well. Finally, Rob, over to you with some closing comments there.
Okay, I would say when you've built your repository, your EA repository, be very clear to people about what it is, what it can do, how it can help them, and also what it can't do. Because once you've created this repository, if anything like ourselves, it is seen as a really important thing, and everybody gets excited about it, and the expectations can sometimes exceed what it's there for. Not because that's wrong, just the fact that people find something which is very, very useful that they've never had before and suddenly expect it to be much more than it actually is. And so be clear on what your repository is there for, and what it's there to achieve, and then be prepared for people to get engaged with you.
Yeah, that's a really important one. It's something we've come across a few times, and we always have to say it's okay to say no to people who want to put something in Abacus or want to do a piece of work. It will take time, I guess, to see the value from those types of users, but definitely, like you said, have some clear understanding of what actually is going on and into Abacus at the same time. There are a few other questions coming in, but what we'll do is we'll take those offline and we'll answer those. So I just want to thank everyone on the call, audience-wise, for participating and asking the questions. Hopefully it's been really insightful. We've definitely had some good content and good engagement. And thank you guys again for taking the time out of your days to join these calls, both early and late, I assume. It's been really, really useful. So we'll be more than happy to forward any of these kind of questions that come up to you guys if you're happy to receive those. But yeah, once again, thanks again for your